Yeah, hello and welcome. As we kick off our fact files, essentially, which are primers asking the very basic questions on a whole bunch of issues. A lot of our programming is obviously focused around COVID or coronavirus, but today we take a slight deviation to focus on the government's 170,000 crore or 1.7 trillion rupee plan for poor and migrant workers, which hopes to address the challenges that have been thrown up by the disruption caused by coronavirus across this country, particularly amongst the poor and migrant labor. So to understand this better, I'm joined by Dr. Brinda Jagirdar, an economist, and I'm going to pose some questions to her, which will hopefully throw light on, first, the nature of the problem, the impact it's had, and then whether this scheme or the set of schemes that have been announced by the finance minister today will have an impact, or what kind of impact. So, Brinda, thank you very much for joining Boom today. So, first question, Brinda. So, how are you estimating the impact of what we've seen so far? The closure of enterprises, the impact on businesses, particularly those who are exposed to global supply chains, and now, of course, domestic as well.
What we've seen is like nothing like I've seen before. So it's affecting enterprises, people, businesses, all across sectors. So it's not just the businesses which anyway were slowing down. And you remember we kept talking about investment not picking up and there not being sufficient demand in the economy. Now this has just got compounded. And the worst hit are really the migrant laborers and the daily wage earners, because they come across from different states and they come to work in metro cities, Mumbai, Kolkata, Delhi, and Chennai, and all other cities, Bangalore. So now they are faced with not only their livelihood being taken away, but they don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. So just think about the people who are working, who are really, earning a daily wage and then taking that home and having their meal based on their family having their meal based on what they have earned that day. So for that, I think the government has stepped in, and we need to really first calm the situation, and that's the message that the government is giving. We are with you. We are there. You will not starve. There is food, and we will make sure that the food is available to you. And there is money in your bank account. So luckily, we've opened the Jan Dhan bank accounts. And so, almost 700 million people have bank accounts today. So now the government is directly putting in money for the disadvantaged, the poorest sections, the widows, the poor pensioners, the daily wage earners. So money is directly going into their account, and that's a big thing. And secondly, the government has said, in addition to what you are getting under the PDS, we are going to give you some more rations, and this will be free. And not only that, the beneficiaries under Ujjwala Yojana, there was a really poor households who were getting gas. So it's not enough just to get the ration, but also to be able to get the way to cook this meal. And if you're giving it to one person, remember the whole household is benefited. So it's a really welcome step. And I think let's not say whether it's adequate, more, this, that. I think this is not the time to quibble about such things. The government's message is loud and clear. We are going through a crisis. We are all in it together, and we are with you.
Right. Okay. So the only reason I'm asking about how much is only in relation to what is our assessment of the impact of what's happened so far. And to that extent, are you able to say, for instance, this is the impact on our GDP or our economy, which therefore requires it to be compensated to this extent, and we'll come to in what form a little later?
It's a little difficult to say, but I will still say that I think that the impact of what we are seeing, the bloodbath across sectors, manufacturing, services particularly hard hit, and of course manufacturing had been slowing down. So across this, the economy was also slowing down. So there are various estimates, and I would say that maybe there's going to be a hit of 4.5%. So this year we may see the GDP actually just stay flat. So we may not see any growth. And to manage a situation like this, I really don't know how much of money is required. But I think this is the first step. The government has looked at now the individuals, the daily wage earners, people who are really scared, worried, and they just don't know what to do next. So I think this is going to help soothe the nerves, douse the fire right now in one section. And I think there will be more to come, because we need help for sectors like aviation, hospitality, hotels, tourism. We need help for everywhere, because these are all labor intensive sectors. So I think pharma. So I think we will see more to come. But I think, Govind, now it's time for us citizens also to step in and do our bit. So whatever we can, however we can, we need to support the people around us, the communities where we live.
Right. So if you were to look ahead now, all of these people can get their jobs back, because I mean we did start by talking about migrant labor, can get their jobs back if the organizations that they work for, particularly in the small and medium enterprise sector, are in a position to take them back, or in a position to restart their factories or plants or shops or offices and so on. So obviously that step needs to follow very quickly. And your thoughts on that?
I think it will follow. It will. The government will look at now supporting these enterprises which are really providing the jobs, and I think that will be the next step, when banks will also be roped into that. So it's really, I would say, it's a Draghi moment, to do whatever it takes. So we'll find the monetary policy and the fiscal policy working in tandem to get over this situation. So as you rightly say, yes, if they have to come back, the jobs have to be there, and the enterprises which support these jobs need to be alive. So I think the government will do that. Will be the next step, and the government is aware that we need to keep these industries going, especially the small and medium enterprises, which provide the bulk of employment. So
Right.
I think, Govind, that's going to be the next step.
Right. So the first move, if we can call it that, has been to focus on cash transfers and food security. Now, between the two, would you lay more emphasis on any one of them, or do you think both work equally? And is this a strategy that could also work in future as well?
I think both are important, because a lot of people have gone back to their hometowns, and so that is also going to add pressure over there, and in the rural areas, in the small towns. So making available food, that's the first essential step, and the second is, of course, putting some money in the bank account, which is reassuring. And right now, of course, they can't go out and keep spending the money, but they know that it is there. And tomorrow, if there is an emergency, or tomorrow, if they need to use it, they have the money, because they've lost their jobs, remember? So they don't know where the money is going to come from. So this money which comes into their bank account is really a very major step in reassuring. So I would think both, as the minister also announced, Anna Dhan, both are equally important.
Right. So if we were to look ahead and say what and how could things bounce back, what's your sense? Because I mean, it is inevitable that demand will kick in, and maybe at a higher pace than before, because there will be a catch up. But what's the time frame? I mean, when you have a shock like this, which is a demand shock and a supply shock, how I mean, are you able to project ahead?
Govind, it's so tough. It is so difficult to project ahead in a scenario like this. Look at what's happening to New York. Look what's happening to Italy, Spain, UK. It's very difficult to project. So, but I would say it's not just a 3-week, 2-week matter. It's definitely something much longer. Perhaps the worst would be over in the next 3 weeks, because then we would be able to flatten the curve. And from then on, it would perhaps be more manageable. But my own sense is that things would not return to normal in a hurry, and we could look at 2 or 3 months down the line being very much where we are. And I really hope it doesn't get worse. That's the only prayer. Because there's very little else to do. In the meantime, there is some good news coming in. Apparently, New York has been able to flatten the curve. And they've got some kits which are now available, which can give you the result in 15 minutes, corona test kits. So I think things like that, and I hope some medicine also comes in. The
Sure.
results of the research are also are also become available to people, and they come into commercial use quickly. So if that happens, then of course the turnaround would be much faster. But otherwise, my own sense is that the next 1 or 2 quarters, we can really write them off.
Right. And last question, Dr. Jagidar, do you see any fundamental or structural changes in an economy post a shock like this? I mean, could some things never be the same again? Is that possible?
Yes, of course. Some things would never be the same again. The first would be our attitude that nothing can happen, and we can just chalta hai. That I think that attitude will take a hit, and that's a very good thing. And that is very, very much needed, and I think that would be welcome. But yes, things will never be the same.
And do you see, I mean, structural changes in the economy itself? I mean, do you see, for instance, a lot of people are speculating that maybe more people will work from home, that will have an impact on the way we lease office space and so on. I mean, this may change or this may not change. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Work from home is not always possible in all situations. So in the tech area, perhaps it would be easy, but then the frontline banking desk has to remain open. The hospitals have to remain open. The hotels, hospitality, They have to function. So work from home may not be possible everywhere, but perhaps companies will now have to have work from home policy. So that would be like we have a whistleblowers policy, we have a prevention of sexual harassment policy. So I think now companies will also have to put in place a work from home policy. Yes, things will change. Definitely they will. It's never going to be the same again. Like I said, would be our attitude. And then, yes, maybe the way we work, and maybe now there will be more emphasis on work-life balance, perhaps. And I think I'm looking forward to that.
Right. Okay. And sorry, absolutely last question. And this is much broader, the nature of globalization. And this is what we are experiencing is really an outcome or a fallout of globalization and the free movement of people between and goods, obviously, and between places.
I lost you.
So my question was, and the last question was, is this going to impact globalization as we know it, the free movement or relatively free movement of people and goods between countries and places?
I think this was already happening because there was a lot of disenchantment against globalization, and there was more emphasis on regional groups. Already this was happening because the fruits of globalization had not percolated down, and there were only some groups or some sections which were enjoying the fruits of globalization. So I think, yes, you're right. I would agree with you that perhaps now the emphasis on globalization and free movement, there would be a rethink on that, and there would be much closer community, local, kind of things emerging, solutions emerging.
Right. And I'm sure that's something that we're going to talk about a lot in coming days as this settles down, and hopefully it will settle down. So meanwhile, Dr. Jagidar, thank you so much for joining us, and stay safe and see you soon.
You too. Thank you.